Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. And today we are covering and continuing our coverage of the ongoing Russia-Ukrainian war. And obviously we have the main map with the area of operations near Bakhmut. We will also look at Avdiivka as well, as these are the main areas of operations by Russian forces against Ukrainian forces. So first off, it has been very interesting to observe and watch some of the pro-Ukrainian YouTubers. And as I watch these content providers talking about the ongoing war, in one specific episode, and I will remain nameless in terms of the actual YouTuber. Again, nothing against these pro-Ukrainian YouTubers or Russian YouTubers. Again, we are trying to be as impartial as possible. But again, as they were discussing the war, they had talked about the flight of up to quote-unquote 1 million Russian fighting age males, ranging in age from 18, 19 on up to late 40s. And while this is being discussed in the talk about the up to 1 million Russians departing Russia out of fear of being drafted, these very YouTubers, again, who appear to be fighting age Ukrainian males themselves, have departed Ukraine. Now, I have to look at what is happening in my shoes. If I was here in the United States and some foreign adversary had launched an invasion against the United States and we were fighting on U.S. soil, and there was a general mobilization, mass conscription, and that is occurring in Ukraine. They reportedly have well over now 1 million persons in their armed forces. So would I leave and would I go to Canada, or would I flee to Mexico? And I would say absolutely not. Even at my age, probably the likelihood of me being drafted would not occur. But with that being said, I believe that if I was needed, even if I had some sort of health issue or what have you, I would probably find a way to contribute. And that doesn't necessarily mean you are fighting on the front lines. It could mean that you are sweeping floors, that you are serving food, that you are repairing equipment in the rear, that you are part of the military-industrial complex. Difficult to say. Now, look, you could also argue that a content provider in support of the Ukrainian cause is contributing. So you would have to weigh in that as well and then make that argument. But would I leave? Would I go to Canada? Would I go to Mexico to then create content while other folks are fighting in my stead? Probably not. Probably not. Well, definitely not. So again, it's just a bit ironic, a bit gets my attention a bit when again they talk about 1 million Russians fleeing, and then those very YouTube content providers have also fled the Ukraine and are now safe in the rear with the NATO forces that are continuing to train Ukrainian forces in the rear that kind of have that luxury of not being accosted as of yet by Russian aircraft and cruise missiles. But we'll see if that changes. The Russians continue its attack upon Bakhmut, again, these frontal assaults, and we're hearing both sides are continuing to take rather serious casualties given the localized area of the fighting. If we look at least this force construct of Ukrainian forces that are now deployed near Bakhmut, it's significant. If we look at just what is deployed on this map in terms of brigades, and we have right now, again, this is just what's on this map. I believe that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll call that regiment a brigade. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So let's just call it 20. We'll just call it 20. 20 Ukrainian brigades, numbering between 2,000 and 4,000 personnel. That's quite a force in terms of what the Ukrainians have deployed near Bakhmut. And the Russians continue to ever get closer and closer to actually getting inside of the city of Bakhmut. If we go over to Avdiivka, see if the map changed for us here. Good old OBS, and it did. There appears to be a bit more progress in the envelopment operation by Russian forces near Avdiivka. You can see they have fully enveloped both from the north and the south Avdiivka. And if we back up and we look at Ukrainian forces, obviously it is a bit smaller, so it appears, at least on the surface, the defenses in and around Avdiivka are probably a bit more aged, a bit more reinforced, probably better positions in terms of Ukrainian forces, and that's probably why we're not seeing quite as many Ukrainian brigades near Avdiivka. And then here you have 1, 2, 3. And I would wager, and these are battalions, most likely operating drones. So again, nowhere near the size of the forces near Bakhmut, but again, you are starting to see the Russians make quite a bit of headway near Avdiivka. But the Ukrainians are really making an issue out of Bakhmut. They do not want to lose Bakhmut, and the Russians really want to capture Bakhmut. So is it the wisest decision by Russian forces to continue these, what for all intents and purposes are frontal assaults against Bakhmut? Difficult to say. I mean, we're not seeing a lot of innovation as of yet. I mean, we saw that early in the war, probably too much innovation and audacity by Russian forces. And again, I think that is largely due to I feel that some Russian battlefield commanders believed that the Ukrainians were going to simply quit and not fight. And the failed operation near Kiev obviously was significant. It was a defeat. And again, in the south, we saw more or less near Crimea some very successful Russian offensive operations that probably were the most successful in terms of seizing control of Kherson and actually at one point threatening Mykolaiv and what looked to be a continued operation all the way to Odessa. That is off the table now. But again, we believe probably late summer, we can expect to see more audacious Russian operations, more aggressive Russian operations elsewhere. We've just observed another barrage of Russian cruise missiles, up to anywhere from 70 to 90 Russian cruise missiles were launched against Ukrainian infrastructure targets, military and infrastructure targets. The Ukrainians are reporting that they shot down most of these, and that approximately anywhere from 9 to 10, according to the Ukrainians, cruise missiles actually hit their targets. Now, if that's the case, if the Ukrainians indeed shot down the vast majority of these Russian cruise missiles, that could be problematic for the Russians. The Russians appear to have the capability to launch about 100 cruise missiles in one strike package. We have not really seen the Russians launch cruise missile attacks in excess of 100 cruise missiles. So these platforms that they're using, obviously, are ships. They are using strategic bombers. And then they are also using ground-based Iskander systems that fire both the semi-ballistic missile, precision-guided, and a variant of a cruise missile as well. And then again, the strategic bombers, the backfires, the bears. I don't know if the backfires are actually launching the cruise missiles. I think it's their blackjacks and their bears. But what we're really seeing right now mainly is bear bombers. But we've also seen 2 reported explosions near or at these air bases deep inside of Russia, where these refueling tankers and these bombers are operating from. So what was that? Well, I doubt that the Ukrainians are going to take credit for a long-range strike against Russian targets deep inside of Russia. And it's difficult to say what the Russians will say. I mean, will they acknowledge that it was a Ukrainian strike? Will they acknowledge that it was some sort of Ukrainian operation? Or will they say it was a Russian airman who dropped a cigarette near a fuel tanker? I don't know. Difficult to say. But if we have seen 2 explosions at Russian air bases that house strategic Russian assets, I highly doubt that explosion was caused by an errant cigarette. Just saying. So that's kind of where we're at for today. We'll continue to watch, again, what is happening on the ground. I don't want to say the war is stagnant. Obviously, we have seen the Ukrainians deal several blows to Russian forces over the last few months in terms of retaking territory. Right now, the best the Russians can do at this point, again, cruise missile attacks and these consistent attacks towards Bakhmut and Avdiivka and some other locales as well. But I would anticipate, again, going into the summer months, this may change. This may change in terms of what the Russians are doing and how they're conducting their operations in this war. Look, they're going to have to do something to regain initiative. They may feel like they're controlling the clock and maintaining some sort of initiative, but the reality is right now that and this is going to be tough for some viewers to hear this, but right now the Ukrainians are winning. In terms of war goals, war aims, war objectives, looking at what the Russian war goals are, looking at what the Ukrainian war goals are, right now that's the case. But again, do not count the Russian Federation out of this. I think that mistake was done by the Germans in 1941. As they could see Moscow just several kilometers away from the center of Moscow. The Germans believed they were going to win. And then winter set in. What happens next? Will we see the Kremlin let loose the gods of war against Ukraine? Meaning give the Russian general staff, the battlefield commanders, the latitude, and that includes operations out of Belarus, to win this war. And that's what it is. It is a war. The Ukrainians are fighting this like a war. We have yet to see, but are starting to see, the Russians do that. And I think that's been a big mistake on the part of the Kremlin. Not treating this from day one as a war. The troops that went into Ukraine, by all accounts, some of the troops did not believe they were going to be getting into heavy fights. And that was a mistake. Every soldier, every Russian soldier that was crossing into Ukraine should have been under the belief that they were going to be facing a very determined Ukrainian adversary. And that does not appear to be the case. And that was a mistake. Now, have the Russians learned? Are they adapting? It does appear so. But are they going to adapt and fully mobilize on the level that we are seeing with the Ukrainians? Difficult to say at this point. But we will continue to monitor, report, and bring you more content for your consumption. Thank you for joining us today, and as always, have a good day.